A few years back, MPVs seemed like the in thing, but soon after, the fad died away and many models felt the brunt of it. The Enjoy, the Mobilio, the Xylo, the Mini Xylo, the Logi, and even the stillborn Grand Titan-based MPV from Hyundai. Two models that seemed unharmed though were the Innova at the higher end and the Ertiga at the lower end. A little while later, the Innova came back stronger than ever with the Crista, and now it's time for the Ertiga to recreate its success with this, the second generation Ertiga. If you've been hearing about the newfound love between Toyota and Suzuki, you might actually believe that the new Ertiga is modeled after the Innova, for there are a lot of design similarities. But truth be told, the Ertiga was conceived much before the love bloomed between Toyota and Suzuki. Where the similarities are basically stems from the fact that both these cars wanted to shed their image of being breadbox MPVs and look more SUV-ish to counter the dying trend of the MPVs.
It's called evolution, and to that effect, the Ertiga now gets an imposing grille with a very SUV-ish riveted grille design. The converging creases on the bonnet impart a frowning appearance to the face. Adding to that effect are the angry-looking headlights, which come equipped with a twin-pot layout comprising of projector beam lamps. The sculpting of the bumper is typical Maruti Suzuki, with wide open air dams and large fog lamp housings, with protrusions that look like fangs.
I think the rear end looks quite good. The tail lights look quite good too. There's a bit of a jazz inspiration going on there with that hook shape. The size of the tailgate is quite large, which means the opening of the boot is quite large too. The loading lip is quite low, so stowing away your luggage is easy. It's even easy ingress and egress for your dog. The space at the back is now better than the previous generation Ertiga, but it's still not good enough to pack in a weekend's worth of luggage for the entire family. But with the third row down, the space is again quite good.
The side profile is usually the tricky part on any MPV, and the slab sides can mar the aesthetics. The Ertiga's subtle creases and the low roofline do little to escape that shortcoming and immediately establish this car as a typical MPV.
I like the treatment of the D-pillar, and that along with the floating effect given to the roof does add some respite to the side profile. But I believe that larger wheels and more flared wheel arches could have helped the Ertiga's cause better, like it did for the Aria-derived Hexa or the Mobilio-derived BRV. And speaking of proportions, the new Ertiga is now slightly longer, taller and wider than the outgoing car.
As expected then, the cabin is larger too. And as before, a bright beige choice of color for the interior trim adds to the perception of space.
The longer length of the car has also allowed for marginally larger doors, which also open quite wide, so ingress and egress is marginally easier than the outgoing car. As always, you simply just walk into the cabin. It's not too high, not too low. Seating is quite good. The default leg space, even with the seat set to my driving preference, is quite good. The knee room is good. Headroom is quite good too. Under thigh support could have been better, because if you look at the seats, they are literally flat. There's hardly any contouring on it, and that is because it will help you squeeze in up to 3 adults in this second row. They also have a single tumble mechanism for easy ingress and egress into the third row. As always, there is adjustability for reach and recline on the second row, but now you also have recline adjustment for the third row seating.
The cabin has enough storage spaces too, including 1-liter bottle holders in every door. If you like the solitary cool cup holder in the previous Ertiga, then now you're going to get 2 in the tunnel console of the new one. Plus size phones find space in the tunnel console and in the left door pocket. I would have liked more USB sockets too, though you do get a 12-volt socket in every seating row. ABS, ISOFIX style seat tethering mounts and reversing sensors are now a standard fit. So are 2 airbags up front. But for a popular people carrier like this, Maruti Suzuki should have offered 2 airbags per seating row at least as an option. While no crash test data was available during this test, Maruti Suzuki claims that the Ertiga conforms to the Indian crash safety norms. The overall build quality seems to be on par with new generation cars, despite its lightweight architecture.
The previous generation Ertiga, the design of the dashboard was very similar to that generation of the Swift or the Swift Dzire. Here there is a clear distinction when you compare it to the hatchback or the compact sedan. It doesn't look anything like it. I like the multi-layered design that they have adopted for the dashboard now. The AC vents, the design for it is a little German. It has that straight lines. I think it looks quite simple, but at the same time, it does look smart to me, and it is very functional as well. I like the forward finish. I know I don't like it much in the Desire, but here somehow it just comes together very well. It's got a nice pleasing vibe to it. The overall design looks good. You also get a flat bottom steering wheel, much similar to what you have in the Desire. This one also gets a leather wrap on it, so it feels a little more premium. The plastics, they are plasticky, they are the scratchy type, they are not soft touch, but it's still well done. The overall fit and finish for this price point is really nicely done. Maruti Suzuki is nailing it with all their premium vehicles now, and it doesn't change with the Ertiga either. You also get a touchscreen infotainment system, again similar to what you get in the other premium Maruti Suzuki cars. You get satellite navigation, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, all that is in here. It's available on the top spec trim. I also like the instrumentation. It's very similar to what you have in the Baleno. So you have a full color multi-information display. It also has those cool power and torque meters to tell you how much of it you're using. Not like it has a lot of power and torque. Oh, but yeah, speaking of that, let's take a look at the new engine options as well. As always, there are two engine options to choose from. There is the 1.3 litre diesel, which is the same trusted 200 DDIS engine, the 1.3 litre engine. And what I'm driving right now is the new petrol. This is the 1.5 that debuted with the Ciaz. So it gets the mild hybrid technology, which has an integrated starter generator, a small lithium-ion battery pack, which is mounted below the passenger seat. Now, the advantage of this engine is it's a 1.5. This is a big people carrier. So a petrol engine that's naturally aspirated would need to rev quite high to build power to really generate all that torque. But when you're getting your roll on, especially in city speeds or at city traffic or with a full load on, you need that low end torque, you need that low end shove, and that is what the integrated starter generator will provide. It has a sort of a torque assist or a torque fill function, which essentially gives the engine the additional torque that's required whenever there is load on the engine. And I think it works quite well. This car, compared to the Ciaz, is about 120 to 150 kilos heavier depending on the variant that you choose, but you don't feel that there is a lag. I'm driving with a full house right now, and even then drivability in the city is very easy. It doesn't feel like it's lagging anywhere. It doesn't feel like it's bogging down anywhere. So in terms of the overall drivability for city or for highway, I think the petrol still manages to do quite a good job now with the ISG.
Under a full load, the petrol engine needs about 3200 rpm to cruise at 100 km an hour, which is great for fuel economy. It also pulls overtakes without much stress. Under deceleration, the electric motor recuperates energy to recharge the battery pack. In the usual city commutes, the battery almost always has enough juice to provide the torque assistance for the engine, and that too should help maximize overall fuel economy of the Ertiga.
The petrol engine can be had with two gearbox options. You have the 5-speed manual or the 4-speed automatic. The one that I would go with is the 5-speed manual, purely because it's fun to drive, but again, I can't associate driving fun with an MPV, but it's better to drive with the MPV because the 4-speed automatic is now showing its age. It's very lethargic, it's not as responsive, and it's just not the right gearbox to go with for the intent of this vehicle. Carrying 6 to 7 people, putting that sort of load, the gearbox just becomes a little more lethargic. It just needs to rev all the way beyond 5000 rpm to get going anywhere. So for the Ertiga, if you are going to be carrying a full load every time or quite often, the manual is the better choice. As a city driver, I think the petrol does an excellent job. It even cruises quite well on the highway, but if highway is going to be majority of the driving for you or for your car, then I think the diesel makes more sense. The new generation of Maruti Suzuki cars are lacking on that steering feedback, and it doesn't change with the Ertiga either. But when you're driving around twisties, we did subject it to a few twisties as well, and it feels stable, it feels quite precise, it feels quite confidence inspiring despite the lack of feedback. And I think that's a good thing. Everyone who's going to be driving this car as a people carrier or a daily commuter will appreciate the fact that the steering is quite light and quite precise. I also like the braking performance of the Ertiga. The brake feel is nice and progressive, and even with these Ecopia tires, which I don't really like much, it still manages to brake quite well. Even with 7 people on board, it does brake quite well. The visibility all round is excellent. For the third row passenger, the quarter glass is now large, so you don't get that claustrophobic feeling even if you're seated right at the back. For the second row passenger, it was never a problem. The windows were always large. It's now a little larger with this car. For the driver's seat, again, visibility is very good. The driving visibility right up front, or even if you're talking about the all-round peripheral visibility, is quite good. The A-pillar is not too thick, but you have a tweeter mounted here and the wing mirrors are quite large. So cornering visibility does get hampered a bit, but shouldn't be a big worry if largely you're going to be driving in the city or out on the straight highways. It's only if you are going to hit the twisties, which you ideally may not with an MPV, then it shouldn't be a problem.
That also makes it quite an easy car to come to terms with for a newbie or someone upgrading from a hatchback. Despite its length, it feels very car-like to drive too.
I really like the new suspension setup on this new Ertiga. Compared to the previous generation model, this suspension and everything around it feels a lot more tighter, not stiffer, tighter. It doesn't have that noisy suspension that you have experienced with the previous generation car. We even subject this car to a lot of potholes, undulations, sharp bumps, and it just took on everything quite well. The ride quality is quite supple, and that is what I like about it. In fact, I think it is a virtue of the hardtech platform. We've already experienced that on the Swift, also on the Baleno. One little drawback of the suspension setup on the hardtech is that beyond say 10 or 15,000 kilometers, it does tend to become a little noisy. You have those metallic clunks on the sharper bumps, which I expect will happen with this car as well. But it doesn't really have any effect on the overall damping or the overall ride quality of the car. It just feels supple, it feels cushy, and I think I like it. Even for a car of this size, a 7-seater, the setup is quite good compared to the hatchback that we have in the Swift or the Baleno. This one also rides higher, but despite that, you do not get that wallowy feeling anywhere. It doesn't feel like a long car, it doesn't feel like a long MPV. Even at highway speeds, even if you're not traveling with a full load like I am right now, it doesn't feel too light on its feet. It doesn't feel unnerving in any sense. It is nicely grounded, it feels quite stable even at highway speeds, and that I think is a very good thing. The ride comfort even in the second row is quite good. You have excellent visibility like I spoke of. It feels roomy, it feels nice in here. You do not feel claustrophobic. So even if you're going to be doing long distances, it's not a problem at all. Even though the contouring of the seats is quite flat, still the long distance comfort seems to be quite good. So no complaints there either. The only little complaint that I have is that you have this booming sound inside the cabin, especially here in the second and the third rows, beyond the 80 km/h mark. So out on the highway, long distances on the highway, you will have that booming sound. But if you have a good audio playing, probably even that will be taken care of.
In fact, the lack of enough insulation against road and wind noises is the only thing that I would complain about in the new Ertiga, apart from the lethargic automatic transmission, of course. Otherwise, the new Ertiga is a true evolution, bettering its predecessor on all counts: comfort, space, design, dynamics, and theoretically even fuel economy. And therefore, it justifies the premium that it now charges over the outgoing car. Maruti Suzuki might even add a CNG variant to the Ertiga at a later stage to take care of the fleet segment, where this mid-size MPV is extremely popular. Furthermore, I believe that its new design, and even this communication color for that matter, is a conscious effort in making the Ertiga come across as a scaled-down Innova Krista. And that is actually a very wise move. With the Innova having moved significantly higher up the price ladder, there'll be a large chunk of Innova aspirants that the Ertiga will now cater to. There are about 4.2 lakh Ertigas on the road already, and it's a no-brainer that this new one will only capitalize further on that success.